Hi, Pastor Myers here, Grace Place in Brampton. I want to talk to you today about truth and how our culture here in Canada and how Western culture has moved so far away from truth. And you know, as a minister of the gospel of grace, a minister of truth, really it's to the place in our culture where when somebody like myself stands up and starts to declare biblical absolutes, moral absolutes, and the values that God has given us in Scripture, and it's one thing for them to be there, but to begin to speak these moral absolutes into a culture that has opted for moral relativism, it basically is perceived as, oh well, he's into hate speech, and it's truth is greeted almost as though it's reprehensible, and I believe this about truth, and this is where our culture has really departed, and that one day we will have to confront. Here's the absolute truth. With all the moral relativism, everything's okay, go ahead and do what you want to do in our society. Here's the reality. God is. He exists. And He is, and here's the crunch. He doesn't just exist. He is holy. And He watches what's going on. He records what's going on in every individual life. And Scriptures tell us that every man will give an account for even down to every idle word, every act, every criminal act, everything, every act that violates the moral nature of God. You and I, as human beings, will be called to give an account to Him. Now, I know, in our culture, we say, oh boy, don't give us that kind of stuff. And you can dismiss this any way you want. But there is one thing you will not be able to dismiss. No man can dismiss it. And that is, every man has an appointment with God. The Scriptures say, it is appointed unto man once to die, after that the judgment. Now, religious atheism would have us to believe, well, it's just a black hole at the end of the line, so if you can get away with it, get away with it, just don't get caught. That's moral relativism. Everything is okay, and but the only thing that we struggle with in our culture is when we are called to be morally accountable for our actions. We can dismiss that all we want. And we're facing this now in Ontario in particular, with the Ontario government somehow has moved away from the values that were the foundation of our country, the moral principles and values that were rooted in Scripture. Well, they don't apply any longer. Now we are progressive. When we talk about progressive, and we hear politicians saying all the time, what are we progressing toward? Well, I've always talked to you about the death agenda of atheism, but there's more. We have a government here in Ontario that is promoting a policy of inclusiveness. And in this policy, they're enforcing on the schools, kindergarten through grade 12, an agenda of human sexuality that is totally contrary to a biblical value system. Now, I know as soon as you start to challenge the contemporary acceptance of what is passing for acceptable human sexual behavior and start to talk about this as a minister, it's like, oh, what a bigot he is. But in reality, what we need to understand, I am a Christian. I have a Christian worldview, and I happen to believe my Christian worldview and the values that go along with being a Christian. And then we have the religious atheism, and religious atheism is propagating a completely different concept of human sexuality on our culture. Now, I think here's what it says in the Humanist Manifesto number 2. The many varieties, well, I don't know how many that is, of sexual exploration should not be considered evil. Well, now, I don't know how many varieties of sexual exploration there are, but it seems that they're just growing more and more and more. This is religious atheism. What I read to you is simply religion, an atheistic religion that is propagating its many varieties of sexual exploration, and they're doing it in our schools. They're not propagating our historic moral values. They're propagating religious atheism, and no sexual proclivity can be considered evil. Well, there go your moral values. And here's another thing. It's going into the schools. And this has been part of the Humanist Manifesto since 1933. Moral education for children is an important way of developing sexual maturity. Sexual maturity for kids? And when they say moral education, what system of so-called morality is being propagated? Mr. McGinty, you are propagating religious atheism on our schools. And in so doing, you are silencing parents' rights, teachers' rights, and children's rights to be Christian. Parents can't take their kids out of the class. And this is a violation. Now, I'm really not focused here on the whole sexual or human sexuality thing. What I am concerned about, Mr. McGinty, is that this is a violation of our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that gives us a guaranteed right to freedom. The Christian teacher is not free to be Christian. She will be forced to teach this. The Christian parents, the parents who have a Christian morality, will not, by your legislation, be allowed to take their children out. And what possible chance does a child have if a little boy wants to play with a truck and he doesn't want to go along with this? The little girl that wants to just be a girl and play with dolls, what chance will she have? They will become the new targets of bullying. Now, Mr. McGinty, you have an appointment with God. And what you're promoting, people want to be homosexuals, they are free to be homosexuals. They are not free. And Mr. McGinty, you are not free to force a concept of religious atheism on the people of this province that is contrary to the Canadian Charter of Rights. Either we live by the guaranteed freedom of religion, opinion, and belief, and that has to go for Christian parents and Christian teachers, or we nullify the Charter and we have simply gone the way of religious atheism. There's a choice before us as Canadians, and each one of us have to make those choices. Will we be free? Will the Charter stand? Will we be free to be Christians or Muslims or Hindus or Sikhs with our sexual ethic and our freedom to live our religious beliefs? Or will we be forced into this one little box called religious atheism with its intolerance and its death agenda? Thank you.